So don't let me go. Don't let me run off today without introducing assignment 2. You already have project 1 in your hand, so don't let me run off today without running through assignment 2. Okay, like just say, Scott, stop. you haven't walked us through it. Sometimes I kind of get ahead of myself. Okay, so cool. So today our focus is going to be the plan in the syllabus was to talk about images and image optimization. You're doing a lot of this work now in the bitmap and vector graphics course. What we really have a need to understand now is, yes, working with images, working in particular with bitmap images, but as we move, as we move headlong into a more touch screen and a smaller screen environment, and also an environment whereby we know less about, there's less certainty in terms of what the screen size is, we need to understand responsive images. So we need to understand, okay, the user is coming to me with a watch or a small phone, or they're coming to me with a tablet held sideways in landscape position. So it's less about figuring out, okay, yes, I can produce a JPEG image or a PNG that's a small file size, it's fairly well optimized. That's great. Am I giving them the right image? In the sense that, if I've got a great big, if in the desktop version I have a great big banner image across the top of the beautiful landscape, and they're on a phone, do I make them download that huge image, shrink it down, and have them, pay for that bandwidth hit? Or do I give them an alternate image, right? So it's about, there's a couple of things. There's, when we're talking about responsive images, it comes down to, one, we should be giving them the right image size, like physical dimensions, for the size of screen that they have, right? The other trick is we should also be mindful now of not only the image size. How many people have an Apple device? Does anyone have an Apple mobile device, an iPad, or I've got an iPad Mini. I think it's a third gen at home. I also have an iPhone 4 at home. I don't have a modern iPhone. But we need to be cognizant now that 1 pixel does not equal 1 pixel. And this is really, really huge, right? What does that mean, right? Well, it means that if you have an Apple device with Retina display, does anyone understand what Retina means? It's not really anything to do physically with, it doesn't like interact with your eyeball or anything like that. What happens is they took 1 physical device pixel, they did this. So this is the other guy's device, and this is the Apple Retina display device. So the pixel density at that time was a quantum leap forward. It was quadruple the density, right? So they could, but the thing is, if I'm serving up an image, right, this is still 1 px, 1 CSS pixel, okay, which isn't really a device pixel anymore. It's just kind of an imaginary concept. Should they be getting the same image? This device is capable of a sharper image. Shouldn't I give them a higher resolution image if their device can handle it, right? So it's also about, not just about physical sizes, but pixel density on the phones. That's really, really important, right? Now think about the 4K televisions, right? I've got I use a Google Chromecast. I think it's a great little device. They're very cheap. I think they're all about $40 or something like that. You plug it into the HDMI, and you can do all kinds of things on your tablet or your and you can go from Apple devices. It's fairly cost-effective as well. But it's great. So now I have access to and I don't even have a great TV. It's I think it's all of a. I can't remember now. I think it's all of maybe a 46-inch television. It's not even LED. It's an LCD television. But there's a lot of pixels on it, right? So, and I know as the Chromecast, it cycles through a number of photographs on there, and they're amazing pictures. I don't know where they get these banks of photos, but great photographers are obviously showing off their stuff, and it's amazing. I'm like, wow, we need to take advantage of the fact that sometimes people are going to be consuming content on a really, really big screen, right, in front of on their couch. It's not always about, oh, I'm out at Walmart I gotta kind of figure out, is there a deal on snowblowers? It's getting to the end of the season. Sometimes they're at home. So responsive images is about serving up the right image size, serving up the right image pixel density, but also then it's going to be about some amount of art direction. And what I mean by that is, I could shrink down a landscape image that might fit on there onto this screen, right? But should I fit that whole landscape image? So maybe it's an image of maybe a couple of hikers standing on a ridge, right? And you can see the whole big, beautiful valley on the side. Maybe this version, though, if I put that whole ridge on there, you won't be able to make out the hikers. So maybe I should provide this device a cropped version that zooms in a little bit more on the people, shows a little bit less. So maybe it's actually a different image, right? So that's not so much a technical issue as it is a creative issue. Do I show the same picture on different devices, or do I show a slightly modified version? So those are the two things that I want to deal with today. So we're going to talk a little bit about responsiveness, first with the different image sizes, second with different image resolutions, and thirdly, art direction. Maybe we should be swapping out, maybe there should be a different image experience based on the context in which they're viewing it. So also, I guess a caution with this. I'm new to this, so be patient with me. I'm trying to still wrap my head around some of the rapid changes that are happening. We're going to be focusing on the HTML code that can power this. Some of this can be driven by CSS, but you would only do that. There are certain circumstances where you'd move then beyond from the HTML to the CSS to make modifications. But we can do largely, you can do most of this in the logic that we can bake right into the markup. Okay, so yeah, so be patient with this one. This is kind of I'm taking a new direction with this. I think you guys need to know about this and need to be able to understand the mechanics of doing this, because we're now squarely in a world whereby the desktop does not dominate the web anymore. It's just done. We're now squarely in the realm of the mobile. It has more visitors or more market share for web applications than the desktop. Anyway, that's pretty cool. Cool. So to that end, let's point ourselves here. I'm going to open up. I'll use IE just for broadcasting to YouTube or screencasting. First of all, log yourself into Blackboard. We'll pull down some stuff there. No Chrome browser for me. Oh, there it is. So we are on to Module 6, images. Cool. All right. So you can pull down responsive-images.zip. Please extract those images. Cool. You should see a number of images, pictures that look like this. You can get rid of the _ROS10 directory. It's cool. Okay. Fire up a Chrome editor of your choice, or a code editor of your choice. Let's open up, add the project folder for the downloaded code and media. And let's open up not-responsive.html. I'll boost up the font size. Is that good at the back? Bigger? No, it's good. Okay. I'm going to need my glasses. Okay, so let's fire this up in locally here in a browser tab. Delete the zip folder if you could. And let's open up notresponsive.html. Okay. So here we have a kind of a single column layout, and whereby the header is a fairly kind of broad landscape with some, certainly a singular focal point. We also have a couple of content images here. So this image in the header here is a CSS background image. These here are actually content. So it's important when we're thinking about images and our user interfaces that we make a distinction between images that are part of the user interface, right, or the UI, and those that, or the Chrome for the app, and those that are physically content. Yep.
So we should do some is this and something like that, or like always start from the image on CSS, or what's the best practice?
I guess it comes down to, it depends. I don't know if best practice would really, I don't know if I'd be steering you in the right direction if I said there's a best practice. I think it comes down to, so if you have think about it like almost like a theme. Like if you're building a theme for a CMS, like a blog, like maybe a WordPress or Magento or Shopify or something like that, there are certain images that might be constant throughout the interface, right? Maybe there's a background image in the footer that's kind of almost like more like a watermark than it is than a picture. And then there are images that are inside the content, like product images. For example, if you're in an e-commerce app, that would be content, right? Because that would very much, that's part of what the person is coming to that page for. So I guess it just kind of comes down to the nature of the picture. It becomes clearer on a case-by-case basis as you're looking at it. But yeah, sometimes it is a bit fuzzy. You know, so should I put this image, you know, for example, in a header, if there's a branding element, maybe an SVG, should this be in a background? Should this SVG for this logo or wordmark be a background as applied to the CSS? Or should I put it in line as an SVG using an image element actually in the header tag, right? I guess that's not always clear. But if you can make a logical kind of explanation as to why you did what you did, I think that should suffice. So we look at this, and this is great. So, but what I want you to consider now is shrinking this down, right? And so as we move this down to a very small, tiny experience, and when I talk about smaller screens, we have to recognize, for the most part, we're talking about width. We're not talking about height, because people are used to consuming content and scrolling vertically, right? If you're going to force someone to scroll horizontally, do so very deliberately and make it very clear that that is how they're supposed to navigate through anything that's off the page, right? Because that's generally not expected. But here we have, when we shrink this down, the problem is, yes, we have the image scales, but a couple of things happen. First, we scale this down, and the problem is, even though the browser, and modern browsers do a really good job of resampling this image. So it used to be that when you crunch down an image of a larger size, it would look kind of grainy and it would be poor. The rendering would be very poor. Browsers do a really good job now of what's called this resampling, and so re-rendering this at a smaller size without, affecting the quality of the image. But you're forcing this person on this smaller device to download a native resolution for this picture that's more like this big, right? And this one up here, that's fine, but you're forcing them. They're missing out on a lot of. If you think about that header, how much of that image are they not enjoying? But they're paying for it in the sense that it's being downloaded, right? So it's about thinking about the pixels that are the physical pixels that are available on the device, and thinking about creative art direction as well. Okay, so this we can do better with this. So let's take a look. I'll take a look quickly. Oh, if you want to right-click on the screen and hit Inspect as well, this is where the mobile tools, particularly, they're all pretty good. Mozilla does a great job of there. We'll take a look at their tools. Chrome is excellent. They've done a very, very good job. So we can kind of, if you're doing kind of responsiveness and we're doing things like media queries, it's very easy to test how our media queries and other things are working. And we can scale this up and down as well. But you can see what some of the things that happen in a responsive environment. Not always great, right? Let's pull up an iPhone 6. Good phone, right? So this is all right. This is fine. But as you can see, really at this point, in the header, you almost lose the fact that there's a couple of people walking on that path, right? And of course, the poor phone user, if they're on any kind of expensive data plan, they're paying. They're not getting what they paid for. Okay? So let's take a look at the code and see what's involved here. What we've done with the body, we've set the body width to 100%. We've also capped it at max width 1200 pixels. So what happens is the body will expand to a certain point, and then we'll maintain, and any of that difference beyond 1200 pixels in width for the body element is now split between the right and left with left and right auto, and in effect auto centered. So the top and bottom margins are, and you can see here there's not even a page container, which is nice, right? We're using the body itself as the page container. So now we're applying the background color to the gray, gray to the HTML, which is the root element, which is the window object itself. And so you can see, let's eliminate this. Let's crank this open. There you can see. So, so that's one thing. We're simply using the body as the page container. I think it's good. I think if you can show me your work where you're eliminating code, I'll certainly forgive people for using a div ID container as the next element child inside the body. But if you want some forward-looking code, try and get rid of that. Try and use the body as the page container within the HTML. element. I'll be impressed. It may be a little tricky to get working across the different browsers. You might find a little bit of weirdness, but if you want to stretch yourself, I'd like to see you try. So so that's great. So the body, we set the background color to white. The header element. So we've centered the header element. It's a fixed width image here. So there's header.jpg, right? It's fixed width and it's simply centered. And we've hard coded the height of the header element to. Do they give us? They don't give us any metrics on this, eh? No. They don't give me any metrics. If you want to get the metrics for the image, let's see what kind of things it'll cough up here. Properties. Details. Oh, there we go. So under details, 600 by 200 in height. Okay. So, yep. Oh, I'm looking right now. Yeah, I don't hang out in Windows 7 very often. So, yeah, that's cool. Thank you for that. There you go. I can read it. That's cool. Hey, that's fantastic. On the, down here? Oh, there it is too. Cool. You learn something every day. That's fine. Okay, so I don't even have to leave this. This is nice. That's great. I'd rather not leave this if I don't have to. That's great. So, so that's great. So everything else, notice the line height. I've opened that out to 1.5. Now, the important thing to look at here is naturally an image element, you have to understand this, is display inline. It's not display block. So if you want the image to display as a block level element with all the box model properties, you actually have to force display block. Right? Images are inline content. So it's like an image is almost like a letter inside a sentence that would flow with flow content like a paragraph. Right? You would embed an image inside a paragraph and the text would flow around it. That's the default behavior of an image. So in this case, we set that to block, so it takes its own line. It bumps other content, pushes above and beyond, below it. We've set the margins 0 auto, so top and bottom is 0, left and right is auto, so it auto centers that on the line. And also, this is kind of the very minimum. If you want to build an image that's responsive, this is the minimum you should do. And that is apply a max width of 100%. What this does, if the viewport is less than the native size of the image, it will shrink it down. So it kind of gives, it's kind of a quick and dirty responsiveness, right? But it's the least you should do. Now recognizing that over 50% of your audience are likely going to be consuming this on a small screen, not on this screen. Okay. So that's kind of how we've laid that's the lay of the land here. And I'm going to get some wrap the screen here. Okay, so we'll focus on this piece right here, the second image on the screen. Okay, so the first thing here is we want to take a look at doing some resolution switching. So let's offer a number of different options, and we can do this right inside the image tag here on its own. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, we'll leave this the way it is because we need to have a fallback, right? Always if we're doing some other kind of more advanced HTML, adding some more advanced attributes like source set, we have to have the fallback here. So always think about less capable browsers. They're out there. They're still there. So we'll leave that as the source attribute right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a source set. Okay, so the source set attribute looks like this. So SRCSET. Okay. So we're going to add a couple of, or some different versions of this image. So we see up here we have, this is the 800 wide version of this girl here, and then we have a 640 wide, a 480, and a 320, right? Oh, this is the original, sorry. This is the original here, and then we have the 800 wide. Oh, no, that's the, not the fairy one. So the 800 wide here is what we're pulling up in our page. So we want to offer those smaller sizes. So why make the person pull down this picture here of 800 wide at 800 by 533? I don't know about, will they tell me the file size here? Let me see. Responsive images, 800 wide. Will it give me, 125K. 125 kilobytes? That's a lot. That is a lot. You think, wow, 125K. No, think about, try a pay-as-you-go for your mobile data, right? This starts to add up a lot. So that's heavy. Let's not make someone, if someone's in a small, on a small screen, why don't we make them download 38.3 kilobytes instead of 125? On its own, no, that's not that's a significant savings, but if we continue that thinking through an entire application, right, that's going to add up to a massive, massive savings. It'll also mean that the thing comes down like that, right? Whoa, this is really snappy. This is really cool. I got a great connection. Has nothing to do with the connection. Has to do with the end. The people building the front end, and they were thoughtful enough to care. So it's all about caring about these things. Cool. So let's go ahead. So the first source set is equal to our. It's called Elva-Fairy and -300 w.jpg. Okay. Then we add a comma. So the source set is going to be a list, a comma-separated list of different images for the browser to choose. Okay? Doesn't mean they're going to choose any one of these, but we have to provide those options. The next one is the 480. .jpg, comma, and we'll finish off with the last one, which is oops, 800 w.j. So what's your file naming? I'll just break to a new line with the source so we can kind of get a sense of what that looks like. So the other thing too is you have to indicate not only the image itself, but the native width of that image, okay, in pixels. So a bitmap, even though we've got this situation here on the phones where a physical pixel does not necessarily equal, like 1px in CSS does not necessarily equal 1px on the physical device. With bitmaps, the bitmap is comprised of so many dots, right, in height and width. So we have to report in what are the physical dots on that image. So this is what it looks like. So for the Elva Ferry 300 width, let's take a look at, if you click on, oh, it's 320. I got that wrong. So if we click on that image here, this is the native, like there are 320 colored dots and 213 that compose this piece of media. That's all that's there. So we have to report that in. So how that works is you put a space after this, and you put 320W. Why? Not a CSS. It's not a pixel, so we're not reporting in a CSS unit of measure, because that's different, right? This is actually the native width of the image. So the next one is 480. We add a space, 480W. Elva Ferry, this one here. And make sure that is the case. Don't just assume, right? So this is the native width is 480 for this one, and 640 for this one. 640W. And then the 800, is it truly? Yes, it is truly 800. Base W. Cool. Save that up. Okay. So that doesn't do anything. Okay. It does nothing. This is still pulling up the 800 wide. This one here, as it should. Okay. Now we need to provide some sort of direction after the source set here called sizes. So the sizes are equal to, and this is where we're into a kind of a media query situation. So we're actually going to gather some information about the width available to this image on as rendered on the screen. So first thing for the first one, it's max width, max dash width, uh, 320px. So that's CSS pixels. We also have to then say, okay, that's the available space available, but we also need to offer a slot to render that within, right? And we need to do that because we'll see this later when we get into different pixel densities, right? You know, if an image is 480, we may want to only offer a 320 or if it's 480, we may want to offer half, so we may want to offer 240 pixels to double the density, right? So we need to offer, say, what is the box within we're going to put this bitmap? And this one is then 280px. So this one here, this corresponds to the source set, the first value here. So 320 pixels, CSS pixels and below, we're going to use this one, right? At 320 wide, we're going to give it a 280 pixel box. We can just stash it. Okay? So then after the next one, we're going to look at the 480 one here. So now we're going to say another media query, max dash width is 480 px, CSS pixels, and then we add a space, and then we say 440 px. What is the size or the box that we will, what they call a slot, inside which we'll stuff that picture? So this one here will then correspond to this one here. Okay, even though it's natively 480. And then actually I'll get rid of the 640. Let's simplify things. Let's get rid of the this one here. And we'll just leave the we'll just go from the 320, the 480 to the 800. So get rid of that. We'll sidestep the 641 for now. So after that, we then add a comma. So we don't need to put a media query after this, because if it's bigger than 480, that break point will occur. And at that point, we need to say, okay, what's the slot that will fit in the next one here, which is the 800. So simply, I'll ignore, I won't offer a media query in here, just a slot. So those three comma-separated values correspond with the source set. So this will, if these things, when these things are true, this source attribute here will be set with the corresponding value up there. Okay? All within the image element, which is pretty cool, right? So I'm not even adding another DOM node to my markup. I'm simply extending the capabilities of the image element with two new attributes. Okay, so let's save this, file save. And this is probably helpful then to, we'll reload the image first of all. Let's inspect the element here and use our, we can use our responsive settings here. So let's take a look and see. So for this size, I'll reload the page. You have to reload it. Now we want to determine, okay, so this is responsive at 262. Let's change this to, let's say, what was our media query? 320. So let's set this to 320. And then reload the page. So that, I want to figure out, is this in fact loading the right image? So let's go to our sources. Seems to still be reporting in the 800 wide. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to simulate this without throwing it up on a server. Yeah.
Okay.
No. Yeah, it won't. I may actually have to use HTTP to get this to pull this up rather locally. So what we'll do is we'll throw this up on a server. Throw it up on portal. See if we can get this to work. there's something in the console. What did we fail to load? Oh, fave icon. That's still pulling in 100. Let's go to, I'll go to the iPhone 6. Okay, reload the page. Still pulling in 800. Interesting. Huh. 320. So my syntax, there must be a problem with my syntax. All right. Well, we'll try it in Firefox. Fire it up in a different browser, see if we can get a different result. Firefox. Crunch this thing down, reload it. No, it's still pulling in 304. Not modified. Interesting. I can't seem to pull up the different images. Interesting. All right, well, we'll circle back. We'll come back to that with the picture element and see if we can reproduce the same problem. See if I can reproduce the same problem. We have got a viewport tag at the top. Viewports. Interesting. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at the second part so we can get that working. But let's take a look at source set resolutions.html. See if we have more luck with this one. So this is an interesting one in the sense that, okay, let's imagine that the image is 320 pixels, CSS pixels, right? But I may want to be in a situation where I want to offer a 640 pixel image in that space. So I want to take advantage of the fact that I have a higher pixel density, right? So, so here's what that would look like. So here I have, let's take a look at this first of all with Chrome. Make sure I've responsive images. So this would be the file called sourceSetResolutions.html. So let's take a look at this. /sourceSet-resolutions.html. So that is 300. The image we're pulling up is 640 wide, right? So that is this one here, Elva. This picture here. So indeed, the native width is 640 wide. So let's go back to source set. So how I want to get this to perhaps take advantage of a higher density, the code looks sort of like so. So in the image, we'll also use the source set. I'll put this on a new line down here. Oops. Put the source on a new line. srcset equal to so I want, the first one is Elva-Berry -320 wide .jpg, comma. So that's the first situation. So that's our 320 wide. And if the person only has a device that is a fairly low pixel density, just give them that. Don't serve them up with a heavier image just to waste bandwidth. So the first one. Then the second one is the 480 one, Elva-Berry-480 wide.jpg. But this time after that we say 1.5x. So what this means is if the pixel density of this is 1.5 times CSS, so maybe they've crammed 1.5 pixels into an area, physical device pixels into an area that would otherwise be covered by 1 CSS pixel. So a moderately pixel dense phone or tablet, right? And then the third situation is whereby Elva-Berry -640 wide.jpg. In this case, this is if we have a situation where we have double the density, 2 times the density. So in this case, maybe a retina display. I mean, there's all kinds of vendors that do this kind of thing now where it's kind of like an arms race. They're trying to see who can cram as many pixels into a physical CSS pixel as they can. Cool. So then we have the sizes. After that, we then go to the sizes attribute. So then, of course, sort of like media queries, we say max-width 320px. So those are CSS pixels, right? Oh no, in this case, no, in case the density, we don't need to do any of this. No, I stand corrected. With density, that should be enough to have the source set like that. This is going to be the query here. Is this and this. Should be. This might be a bit. You might want to check this out with if you've got your phone with you. You might want to punch that URL in and see. So let's Let's upload that new code, source set resolutions. And let's reload the page. Okay. This one's pulling up 640. So let me go to responsive. Let's go to a rather small device, say a 320. And then I'll reload the page and see if this one. Initiator, source set. No, doesn't seem to be. Looks like it's still pulling up 640 wide, even though I'm only 320. Huh. So try it on your phone. If you've got a physical phone, it should be interesting, particularly if you have a very good phone, if you have one with a good resolution. Try it. Yeah, so I'm not sure exactly how to simulate if this is actually pulling down that one or not. Yeah, I just don't. I'm not sure how to actually determine whether or not this is actually, is this the one? I think this is the resource that is actually being pulled down. It's the 640 wide, but in this case, I should be pulling down a smaller one here, from what I understand. No, still seems to be pulling that one down. Oh well. Such is web. So anyway, so that's the approach that should work if we're just using the image element. So what we'll do is we're going to try now as well with art direction. The next step will be to take a look at the picture element, which actually provides a different wrapper and some other child elements inside it to achieve sort of a different kind of thing. But we'll see if we can get that working on the emulator as well. See if we can actually pull down different files. Okay. Cool. So we'll go back to notresponsive.html. So for this one, let's go back. Try it one more time. See, we're still pulling in 800 pictures. We'll have to work. We'll see if we can. We'll see if we can get this pulling in the smaller image by the end of the day. We'll wrestle this one to the ground. So the next one here, what I'd like to do for this image here in particular, I don't want to download, when I shrink this down, I don't want to see, I want to have a crop. Let's just show the two people up close on the small screen. When we get to the bigger screen, let's offer more of the image itself. So if we look at here, we have Elva. right? So for a large image, yeah, sure, let's show this, show the lawn back here and the some of that scenery. But for close up, let's show that on a phone, right? Particularly if you've got the phone in portrait, that would be much more suitable. So back to, that would be not anymore. So what we'll do is we're going to modify this here to use the picture element to see if we could swap out different versions of pictures. So given it's 12:05 now, I'll give you a break. You go out and grab a snack or something like that, and we'll come back and see if we can get the picture element working. Cool. Some pause. I've got this to work, but I didn't change anything, so I'm not sure what I wasn't doing. So this is Firefox. So once you hit the network and you hit all resources that are coming down, so then you resize the screen, reload it, and so in this case, so for this size of screen, I'm getting the 800 wide version. So let's shrink the screen down a wee bit here, reload the screen. Now I'm getting the 480 version, 480 pixel wide, and if I crunch this really small and then reload, 320. So that means there are real bandwidth savings here to be had by the visitor, right? And that makes sense. I can't, for whatever reason, I can't seem to be able to simulate that same behavior in Chrome, in the Chrome DevTools. I'm not sure. Anyway, if anyone can get this simulation working in, let's go back to, so reload the page here. It still seems to be reporting in that it's pulling the 800. Maybe it just is. Maybe it's still, maybe because I'm emulating that the mobile device, but it's still a desktop browser. Maybe it's reporting something differently. So maybe that's the shortcoming of actually emulating something in a browser that isn't real. That's right. That's cool. We get the idea here. So let's go on to the picture element, which is really cool. And let's do some art direction. So let's say, so on line 44, we have our image. Now, when we're rolling out forward-looking code, always think about browsers that are not so forward-looking. Always think about, hey, there's still dusty old IE8 probably floating around out there, IE9, right? Maybe even IE7. I hope not, but you don't know. So the idea here is the picture element's pretty cool. So you can we tried this before in the fundamentals class. So let's take a look at what we may be able to do with some art direction with picture. So no tricks with the picture element. You surround the image, and this is great. If the picture element fails, so if the user agent just does not understand it, it's like, I don't know what that is. Goes in, renders that. No problem. So your backward compatibility is baked in already. Always think about that. You have to think about the simple stuff. So then what we do is we define the other possible sources with the source element. So that becomes, you have to make sure, however, that the image element is the last child of the picture element. Otherwise, on older browsers, you will get a hard fail. You will get nothing. So make sure that's the case. So we add the source attribute. So let's say we put in a media attribute here, or a media query. So whereby the media is equal to, let's say, set a max width, and we'll say 799px CSS pixels. Okay, so if that is true, so if we are at less than 800 pixels of width, then we're going to set the source set, going to be equal to elva-480 wide w-close close-portrait.jpg. I'll use the XML style syntax there. Save that. Let's go and take a look at upload not responsive here. It's now responsive. Still nothing. Still have the 800 wide. So we need to now complete the put an alternate source here. So if that was to fail, source, and the media in this case, if it's larger than, so we say min width. We say 800 px. Oops. In that case, set the source or source set to elva-800wide.jpg. Okay, those images should all be up there. So this is quite decidedly less than 800. Let's see if we can get this working. And it doesn't work. Classic. Huh. Let's see about Firefox. See if we can get a better emulation in Firefox. We do. Interesting. So Firefox seems to simulate that a little better. Let's try it on the phone. So if you got your phone, point your phone to the same and see if you can get So I get the wide version of the image on, this is Chrome for Google. Does anyone get a different result on your phone? No? Check out, so we can also do, we also check out the can I use and see for picture. Android browser, Chrome for Android. So versions 56 should work. IE 11 is not going to happen, but the support's pretty good. Chrome should be doing that as well. So I'm not sure. Another thing we could also do is check out Validator. If we have problems. I'm just not sure the emulator here, the mobile emulator, is going to work. Seems to do better in the DevTools in Firefox. Nope, seems to be good. So we have good HTML. That's always a good thing. So let's check out. We'll check out IE. That should fail. we'll check the dev tools in here, see what the dev tools tell me about either one of these. So dev tools, let's look at our network. Let's shrink this down here. UI responsiveness. Now let's go back to our network. Crunch this down, reload the page. Pulling in nothing. Interesting. Always fun. Nope. So far, the only one that's playing nice at the moment is Firefox. That's all right. So one of the things that's important when you're swapping out, you only use the media attribute on a source element when you're actually swapping out a different, so you're doing an art direction kind of scenario where you're swapping out a different image, not just a different resolution or a different size. So in this case, we're actually changing out that image. So that's really, really important. Only when you're doing that kind of art direction work, you're actually making creative decisions. We use a media query in the source. Otherwise, we don't do that. Okay. What else can I tell you about that? That's all right. Cool. So the last thing I wanted to talk about as well is great image gradients. So we look at the page here. We have a background color of gray on the page. Gradients, although they're kind of with our new kind of flat style of user interface, they're somewhat, they've kind of fallen, they're not used as frequently, but we still need to know how to generate gradients and use them responsibly. So what I want to do now is we're going to add a soft background gradient to the page, which will be actually a background image, but it will be generated by the browser. So if we can go here to, so there's a link, if we go back to our module 6 here, there's a link to Alex Sorota's colorzilla.com gradient editor. So if you follow that, and this is a great tool, and it also speaks to kind of the work that has to go into supporting older browsers for building images, or supporting images, and in particular a gradient. Now a gradient, we have to remember, actually is a background image, but the image is generated, it's a raster image generated on the fly by the browser. So it's actually not a resource that's pulled down over the network, which is really cool. So we used to say, if we wanted a soft background on the page, we used to actually build a bitmap and build a big bar that started from like a light blue to a dark blue, and then we'd repeat it, but we'd have to pull down that bitmap from the server. In this case, what if we don't want to? So for example, we can design this, and building a gradient is very much it's a creative exercise. It's not a mathematical exercise, right? The mathematics can be figured out for you. So what I want to determine is what kind of gradient am I looking for? Am I looking for a horizontal gradient, vertical? You want it to go diagonally, or do you want it to be a radial gradient? Right? All of these quite different things. So let's just say we're going to do a vertical top to the bottom. Here are the color stops. So there's a couple of things. So color stops on the bottom are color stops. The ones on the tops are alpha stops, alpha gradients. So what we can do is we can, if we want to get rid of that, you can just drag one of those, drag these away, for example, and then I'm only left with the color stop here and the color stop here. If I want to change that, I can click that, change the color stop here, and then I get a color picker. So maybe I want a more of a dark gray color or something like that. That's fine. And then over here, maybe a lighter color. I don't know. Like so. So we can change, and if I change the opacity stop here, I can dial the opacity down. And you can see this change is reflected here in the preview. So not only am I going from this color to this color, I'm going from alpha 100%, 1.0, to alpha 60.6. Okay? So this is cool. I mean, we would have to do this years ago. We would have to generate a block in Photoshop or Illustrator, and then output that to a 24-bit PNG, and that can add to the weight of the page. So we can also add another color stop. You just click here. So double click that. Maybe I want to add, I don't know, something subtle like that. So you can have as many color stops as you wish. What I want you to pay attention here is the CSS. So this is what we have to do, or have had to do in the past. You hit the copy button, and so let's grab this, hit the copy button, and head over to your code in Atom. You see where it says background color gray. We're going to, right in front of that, we'll paste this code. You see a ton of nasty code. I'll format this a bit better. So, in a perfect world, all I need is this, right? If everything was to be perfect and we'd all agree, we'd say background is a linear gradient to the bottom, right? The first color stop at 0%, that would be from the top. Second color stop at 42% down, and the third color stop in RGBA at 100%, all the way at the bottom of the element. In a perfect world, that's all I have to put in there. But we have to deal with backward compatibility. So for older versions of Firefox, we have the prefix, and the syntax is a little bit different. So we specify at the top, and then WebKit. So these are older versions of Chrome and Safari. WebKit, linear gradients, and not terribly different. Different enough to cause problems. In older versions, so in IE versions 6 to 9, we're not so worried about IE6 anymore. We can't even use CSS. You can't do it. CSS rendering engine just can't do it. So we have to use a very proprietary filter, which is nasty, right? So you don't want to kind of hand code all that. Notice though, after all of this, we set the background color to gray. So what this does is, if the background at the top there, if this fails, so this is actually a background image, is what the linear. So it's actually generating an image. So save this. We'll see what the result looks in the browser. Close this out. And you can see the gradient is applied through the background. Right? if I inspect that, you can see that on the HTML, it doesn't take the WebKit one, it takes this one here. When the color stops, it ignores the filter. It still applies a background color of gray, and that's important. Here, let me just see if I can, come on, open up. It's not going to open up on me. Guess I need all this stuff. Let's not use this. There we go. So if I pull out this, right? So if I deselect this, if I enable both of these, you'll see that WebKit, if I didn't have this, it falls back to the old syntax. And then if I don't have that either, then the background color, we at least have a fallback, right? So that's really important, particularly if you have, if you're putting a background color or a gradient that is a color and there's like lighter color text, you must fall back to this. If the gradient fails to render, you're going to get white text on a white background or something like that, and you'll be illegible. So we must consider that at the very least, set a background color, and then the background, the gradient is actually, or the linear gradient is actually an image that's generated by the browser. Cool. There's all kinds of great tools out there to generate images or to generate gradients. Certainly not something I would do by hand. It's interesting, if you click the IE selector, you can see what IE does, older versions of IE. So you can see it can't do multiple color stops. That's just that's what you get. So it'll show you what older versions of IE can actually do with this code. Thankfully, Edge and modern versions of IE are pretty good, so we don't have to deal with that nastiness anymore. But yeah, you want to put in all this stuff for it. Still, I would say yes for today. You know, maybe in a couple of years we can get away with just having that, but you'll still want to fall back to the background color gray, or the background, or you can make it a blue color or something like that. So always think about the lowest common denominator. So there we go. Cool. All right. Let me talk a little bit about assignments. Assignment 2. How sweet it is. Cool. So I want you to construct a simple page template with a header, navigation area, sidebar or aside, page content, and footer areas. Okay, so I want it to be a liquid design, so a maximum 960 and a minimum of 720, or if you want to and automatically center the page. If you want to have some different stops for that min max width, you can play around a little bit with that. So the layout is, make sure that you're using CSS. I don't want you to use a framework like Bootstrap. I want to see your own layout skills now. We're going to eventually be using Bootstrap, yes, but right now, if you attach the Bootstrap framework, all it shows me is you know how to use classes and put classes on your markup. So I don't want to see pure HTML5. I want to see semantic elements. I want to see headers, names, sections, articles, asides, navs. Don't give me any divs unless you absolutely can't find another element that will do the job, right? I need to see semantically rich markup, and then I need to see CSS that speaks to those for a simple layout.
Can we use classes and IDs, but for example, a section and header and name and article?
Try not to. Try not to add a class or ID. The reason is I want to see your CSS selectors. I want to see smarter selectors. So for example, if you have a paragraph in the main and a paragraph in the header, don't add a class to the paragraph in the main to identify it as a main paragraph. Use a contextual selector that says main P or header P, right? Use the structure of the DOM to keep your selectors simpler and your markup simpler. You only add a class or an ID if there's no other way to identify it or add a hook for styling or for JavaScript. You need to have lightweight markup. So it's not wrong, but I want to see you really keep it lean. Lean and mean. I'm going to be giving you, I'm going to be giving you the gears. If you pepper your document with IDs and classes, and that's what you use to style it with, I'm going to give you a hard time in your CSS. That's not the way CSS works. That's lazy, right? And I don't want to see divs. Divs are laziness, right? It's actually less work to type div or footer than div ID equal footer. It's actually less characters, fewer characters. So use a footer, right? Use a header. Inside a section, you can put a header and a footer inside a section. Put a header or footer inside an article. You don't need to reach for those semantically meaningless divs, right? Because then you're adding classes and IDs and making things more complex. When you see example code for tutorials on the web, they'll often use divs, but a lot of times they use divs because they can't make any assumptions as to what markup you need in a given context. So they just put a generic div because they assume you're going to swap those out with your own sectioning elements. You don't just take it as it is. That's laziness. So, yeah. So give me the Holy Grail layout. If you want to make it more complicated than that, like that, that's fine. Try 4 or more columns. I want you to include maybe a table with some nutritional information. You can do that. If you want to try and use Flexbox to do this rather than floats and clears, by all means, right? You can certainly do a Flexbox arrangement. But I want to anyway. So give me some interesting facts about your favorite candy. Give me some eye-popping imagery, some nutritional information, so on and so forth. So show me that you can craft a well-made layout with semantically rich markup. Show me your typography skills that you guys are doing well with arranging type. Open up the line height. Give me nice headings, right? Use restraint with your color and your type. Like no more than 2 different typefaces on a page. 3 if you absolutely have to, but I wouldn't advise it. Make sure your HTML is valid. Okay, and make sure that your CSS. Make sure you normalize. Normalize before your. We had a few people normalize, okay, but they bolted the normalize after their custom styles. That can cause you real problems because you may be working hard to do something, and then the normalization might be cascading over your custom styles. So you normalize first. Think about a wall, right? You put the primer on first, then the top coat, then the color. So make sure you do that. Yes.
Theoretical question.
Yeah.
Let's say first we include our styles, and then we include normalize.
Yeah.
In our styles, every single piece has inversion next to it. For some strange reason.
Yes.
Our code will be then overwriting the normalize.
Yes, even though normalize is later in that rendering order. Yes, that's correct. But if you're using important, that to me, that reeks of desperation, right? So the important tag is one of those tools you keep in your back pocket for very special occasions, very late on a Friday night before you're trying to get away for the long weekend and something isn't working, right? Yeah, if you're using important in production code, that means that you've broken the cascade somewhere, and there's something else you've missed. So it's a good indicator. Yeah, it's a good tool to have. But it's like a sledgehammer, right? But yes, so normalize first, and then your custom styles. Primer on the wall first, then your nice top coat or your wallpaper. Okay, that's cool. So there you go. So this what I'm going to do is the original due date for this one was coming up this week. I'll push that back further into next week, maybe midweek next week. So I'll change the timestamp on that for you, give you a bit more time. The other thing I'm going to want you to do is, because you're possibly designing a page about a brand of candy that exists in real time, I'm going to give you a piece of text that I want to attach to your header that discourages search bots from indexing your page. Okay, because you can find yourself in legal hot water. If you do a really good job of your semantics, you'll actually outperform the brand. And I've seen this. Did I tell you about the Monster Energy story? Did I tell you that? So somebody built a page about Monster Energy drinks, and they did such a beautiful job of the semantic markup, and they made it so lean and mean, and the keywords in there were so good that it actually outperformed Monster's own landing page for that can. And so I walked in on Monday morning with a cease and desist letter from their lawyers. I was like, wow, that's really cool. And they were pretty mad at me. So anyway, so we had to take it down. But I brought it into class and I said, guys, like, check this out. This is how good. If you write semantically meaningful, lean, mean code, you will kill it with the search engines. You'll kill it. You'll absolutely. They should have called this student up and hired them on the spot, right? Like just like that, you know. So yeah, lean, mean markup, valid. Make sure it's well formatted, but use semantically. Use those sectioning elements. Use those, you know. Use all kinds of rich elements. Use ABVRs. Use time elements. Dig into all those tag sets and use them. It makes your CSS easier to read too, because then I can look at. It's very clear what you're styling on the page with those selectors. Right? It all works together, and it also will also make working with the user interface with JavaScript much easier to speak to that DOM when it's very readable from a human perspective as well. Okay, so there you go. So for today's challenge, I know we can only get this working in Firefox, but that's what it is. So for today's lab, here's what I'll have you do. I'd like you to write simple HTML to contain your code. You can use not responsive as a starting point. That's fine. Find a nice wide screen landscape image with some sort of detail contained in it somewhere. Okay. Create a web-sized version of it using a graphics editor. So fire it up in Photoshop or GIMP or whatever, and then create a second image. Right. How about a nice wide one for like, maybe 800 plus wide, and then crop it and make a 480 one, a smaller one, right? Use the picture element, and then see if you can get it to switch. Create multiple images. Maybe chop it 3 times. Maybe have a real detailed picture, have a medium view, and then have the big size. And then see if you can swap it out using source set and size to create a resolution switcher. So the same size of at different resolutions or different image sizes. Okay. So pick one picture, break it down, see if we can get 3 or more different ones using picture. Yeah.
A question about the assignment. Could you just clarify what you mean about the liquid layout and those dimensions that you gave?
Yep. Where is? So liquid layout, a fixed width is where you would, say width is, say, 1080. Right? Liquid layout, it would be percentage, 80%, right? You can, if you set a maximum width and a minimum width, then it will size to those stops. Right? You can do a range. Elastic is where you set the width of a layout using typographic measures like ems. Like we tried that with ems or points or anything that refers to the sizing of the text. So that there's liquid, there's fixed, and there's elastic. Those are the 3 strategies for sizing layouts, if you will. Yeah. So if you want to target, if you just want to target a kind of a mobile first and do a single column and do it in mobile with a breakpoint, that's fine. But really, I'm looking for your layout skills and your typography, and I want to see clean HTML and clean, nice, clean, modern selectors with your CSS that don't rely too much on classes and IDs.
Yeah. So you're saying that the page it'll stretch, like it'll go to 960, it won't get any bigger then, and then it'll only go to 720.
Yeah. So here I'll demonstrate that let's take a look at. So here's the width of the body in this case. right? So we're using the body as the page container, which is pretty forward-looking. Usually we use a div ID container inside the body, which is very common. Most frameworks have this. But what I could do is I could say max-width, and I could say 960px. Oh, no, leave this. Let's change this to, I've already got one there. Let's say min width, and I could say 720px. I'll show you what this does. And, oh, you know what? I'll have to upload it, I guess. This was not responsive. So it'll shrink to a certain point, and then it'll collapse to a certain point. Oh, yeah. So see here, we now have a scroll bar. So it will, if you give a max and a min width, you're just basically saying a range of sizes, which is nice. You know, a lot of it depends on your content. And if you're using media queries, maybe just to suggest, oh, this is what I want it to look like on a tablet versus a really small, like single column view on a phone or on a TV or desktop. You could do that. You could do min and max, or you could say 80% wide for this, or yeah. Cool. So this is very much an emerging kind of technology, is responsive images. There are, you can do, using the picture element and using source sets, you can do this, certainly you can do this in the CSS. It's a bit more complicated, but really this is probably something that's best, where the logic is best left in the markup, and only defer to the CSS where you have to, where you have a situation where markup alone won't do it. So maybe some more finer grained controls. Anyway, I'll point you to a great article from MDN that will go through some of the finer points for your reading. So for today, go. So choose an image, a nice wide image, and see if you can get, using the picture element, to do a cropped version, a semi-cropped version, and the full width. See if you can get it to swap out. Okay. Go. Do it. Make it happen. Validate your HTML. Validate HTML. Okay. And if anyone can get this simulation working in Chrome, I want to see it. I can't get my Chrome to do it. On Windows 7 or on OS 10. I can't get it to work for whatever reason.
Is this just due today? Or
Yep.
Yeah.
Today. Yeah.
After class?
Yes. Today, as in either sit down and do it now or do it before midnight. How's that? How's that for today being calendar day? Okay. Other than that, I guess next week is reading week, so don't come to class next week. I won't be here. So well-deserved break. Take a little bit of time off for yourself. The brain is like a muscle; it does need rest. Right? We're dumping a lot of stuff, throwing a lot of stuff at you guys. So take a little bit of a breather. You might have some stuff to get caught up on, but take a rest as well. Okay. I'll be around next week too. If anyone you want extra help, something's not working right, you're confused about something, you want some advice, you want to talk about co-op or anything like that, I'm here. Come and send me an email. We'll meet. All right, I'm going to wrangle this. I'm going to wrangle Chrome to the ground here. Chrome works on this thing. It's nuts. Chrome works brilliantly on this, on OS 10. Yeah, it simulates it flawlessly. It's Windows 7. Grr. I'll have to get Rick to update this podium. Put Windows 10 on it, man. Make my life easier. I'll show you how it works. I'll show you what it's looking like. I guess I'll pause this screencast here, and thanks for watching.